The SPY technique it's a rapid manifestation, because what I teach people to do is to see opportunities that are already sitting there available for you. Visualization is a good tool. We can visualize things that we want to happen in our life, but unless it's available for us in the near future, it can take a really long time to manifest those in our life at times, because everything has to come into place. So I began to notice that I could scan, and what I call scan, which is spy, into my future, see if something I wanted was present, where it was present, what it was going to take to bring that into my actual reality of life, and begin to own that rather rapidly.
Welcome to the MINDTRX Podcast, where we explore breakthrough ideas on how to live your best life possible. I'm Dr. Paul Scheele, and today I'm joined by Linda Eastburn, intuitive guide, author, and teacher of what she calls Superpower intuition. In this episode, we explore how to access and refine your natural intuitive abilities. Linda shares her personal journey from early spiritual awakening to deep meditative practices that opened her access to what she calls the universal mind. We discuss the difference between ego-driven thoughts and true intuitive downloads, how to practice discernment, and why the future is not just something you walk into, but something you can actually spy, shape, and manifest right now. If you've ever wondered how to trust your gut, align with higher guidance, and call in the future you want most, you're in for a powerful ride. Let's dive in. Hello, Linda. So good to have you on the podcast. Welcome aboard.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Well, I've always said to anyone I worked with that we're all naturally gifted, intuitive beings capable of profound insights into the workings not only of the world around us and the universe, but also to the world within us. So when I read your book, I immediately knew we were kindred spirits in this work. So I'm excited to share with our listeners the ideas that you have presented. I would like to start, if we could, in this journey of how do we access and apply our intuitive powers, to get a little bit of a background of your origin story into this work.
Sure. Well, first of all, I want to say that I grew up in just a farm setting. It was just a very natural, organic kind of environment. My parents were just simple people that lived a very simple life. And so that was my beginnings. But we were very much religious, went to church every Sunday. My father was a deacon at our small country church. So I was introduced to spiritual ideas, not necessarily intuitive ideas, but spiritual ideas. So I always felt this kind of kindred spirit with things that were non-physical, at least. As I progressed and got older and went into business, I began to notice there were a lot of times that I had awareness of things before they happened. And these were natural things. There were several times when it was very profound. And it was not only in business, but sometimes in my personal life as well. It would just show up. Some can say that that was because my subconscious mind was very aware and was recording all of the things around me. And I do think that plays into a lot of these insights, of course. But also there were things that my conscious mind could not possibly have known about. And it would just happen to be that I would know these things. So as time went by, I was actually about 30 years of age when I began to question a lot of things. I began to look at my thoughts and how those were moving out into the world. And it wasn't even with prayer anymore that I was noticing things coming back. And I questioned a lot of those things. I still had a lot of faith, don't misunderstand me, in the religious context, but I was just noticing that it didn't always require the same procedure that I had perhaps had in before. And a lot of this was wrapped around a divorce I went through in my late 20s, where I was very aware that there was a problem there. Now, a lot of that, again, was because I was probably aware of my husband's behavior changing. He was having an affair. It was a very, very short-lived marriage of only like a year and a half. And I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know exactly what. And then one night I had a dream. And this dream showed me this woman with very long hair and big, beautiful brown eyes. And in the dream, I knew she was a threat to me, but I didn't know how she was a threat to me. But I became very suspicious after that dream that something was indeed going on with my husband. Later on, I met a woman that he was a co-worker with, and she looked just like the person in my dream. I'd never met her before or seen a picture of her or anything. And sure enough, that was the individual he was having an affair with. We got a divorce. And after getting that divorce, I began to really look at my life more intently. And one of the things that happened to me, and I thought this was really a game changer. It completely altered the direction of my life, and many things did at that point. But one of the things, I was in prayer, and I didn't like the way my life was going. I just wanted a different way of life. And this insight came back to me, an intuitive insight. It wasn't an audible voice, but it was definitely a distinct knowing that said, Linda, if you want your life to be different, you simply must take responsibility for it. And at that point, I felt like that was the voice of God, is how I would have worded it then, because I wasn't real familiar with this intuitive voice or this intuitive knowing that I later became extremely familiar with. But I understood that I was given the keys to the car. And at this point, I could drive this car in any direction that I wanted to drive it. And it was up to me how I moved forward with this. So at that point, I started literally taking charge of my life. Yes.
It's so neat that we can get those kinds of intuitive hits that really shift or transform our lives from one level where, as you describe it, we're in a box that's been programmed by our society and our family system, to really liberate ourselves to this next level of awareness and self-authoring. So when you started on that path, you became a lot more familiar with the power of intuition, and superpower. Intuition is really the message that you're taking to people. One of the biggest questions that I have always come to me when I'm teaching people the use of intuition is, how do I know that what I'm getting is accurate and not just from my willful wish for something that I would like to have happen? How do you get people to that point of discerning the purity of an intuitive insight from just their own imagination or desire?
Well, that's a really good question. And over the years teaching this, for about 30 years now, I've taught people how to get in touch with their intuition and how to use that discernment. For me, it was a journey. I spent about 6 years in deep concentration states of meditation. And in that meditation, my practice was a little different than just stealing my mind. It was asking a question and getting an answer. And I would record those. I would write down my question. I had a journal that my questions and answers that would come back. And most of all, I analyzed those. How accurate was that piece of information that came back? What was my state of mind when it was coming back accurately as opposed to not coming back accurately? One of the things I began to notice for me, and I teach this in my classes, is to be able to understand your motivation. When there's a need to know, I found there was definitely an answer that was correct. When there was motivation to know, there was an answer that was correct. But I had to get my ego out of the way. And this is a hard thing for us to do sometimes, because our ego wants to already know. what the answer is. And sometimes, I find many times, the intuitive piece of information that comes back completely disagrees with what my conscious mind thinks. So I have to be open-minded enough to receive that message and just be a blank slate. When I began doing consultations or intuitive sessions with other people, especially, I had to notice that because I would have an opinion. And my conscious mind had to sit over on the sidelines because that opinion could definitely get in the way of the answer that could come through. So working from a state of purity really became a state of no opinion, no input, no analysis of it. Just let the information purely come through. And I could argue with that after the fact if I wanted to, and have many times, or try to prove it or disprove it right or wrong. But if I just let myself purely receive the information, like reading a book, not agreeing or disagreeing, just take in the information from a place that is objective. But also after practice, I began to understand if I spoke the words, I could listen to my heart because it was in my heart. It would tell me if that was an accurate statement or an inaccurate statement.
Okay, well, I want to go on that for just a moment because I've noticed that in my own life, the voice, when I am hearing it in my own mind, has a quality of calmness, a quality of resonance. There's no sense of urgency, like I've got to do this. There's just this real sense of ease and calm to that voice. Are you making those sorts of distinctions when you're reading it back to yourself?
Early on, whenever, yes, but there's two stages to that. Early on, when I was not well versed in what I call the dialogue, that was a back and forth dialogue that I eventually developed, I would notice in business, because we were real estate investors, that there was a calm within my body. This is before I knew much about intuition. There was a calm in my body when I knew we were going to purchase a property. It was ours. It was like it already belonged to us. And when I was anxious about it or felt, oh, what kind of price do we offer? Do we want to make on this? And there was that anxiety present. We almost never bought the property. But when that calm came along, it was like, it's already a done deal. We already own it. So yes, that's true. But now something spontaneously happened to me. And this was before I went into the work as more of a body, mind, spirit type of health intuitive work. And I did that for 30 years, teaching people how to be more aware of their physical system. And it was a time when I was pretty new at doing this and I like to refer to it as my intuitive sessions were like pulling teeth. They didn't come easy for me at that point in time. But there was a woman that I didn't know, and she booked a session. She was asking questions about some issues in her life that had nothing whatsoever to do with health at all. And she came and we did those sessions, and they were simple. They were very, very simple sessions. But before that, I'd kind of intuitively felt like moving this little crystal that I had up to a table where we were going to be doing the session. And I didn't know why I felt compelled to move it there, but I did. It didn't hurt anything. It was a little decorative crystal. But at the end of the session, she asked me to get in touch with her guardian angels. And I felt very intimidated by that because I really had never tried to do anything remotely connected with angelic realms or anything like that. And I said, well, the only thing I can do is try. So at that moment, I felt like I needed to pick up that little crystal, and I put it between the palms of my hands. And there was a sensation that ran up my arms and into my heart. And suddenly my heart, whether it be chakra, you want to call that or whatever, there was just a deep, deep, deep level of compassion that opened up inside of me. And all of a sudden, there was this download of information for her, and it all involved her health and her well-being. And it was about how she wasn't taking care of herself. She had a debilitating disorder. I didn't name the disorder, but she really needed to change her lifestyle immensely because she was really killing herself and wearing herself out. So this came through very rapidly, and I couldn't get the words out fast enough because it was such a dramatic download. And later on, after studying brainwaves, because I'd worked as a hypnotherapist as well through the years, so I understood brainwaves to some degree, but I didn't understand this brainwave. But later on, I found out that Tibetan monks could get into a very concentrated state of meditation. And in that extreme concentrated state, they would automatically go into this, especially when it was coupled with compassion, they would go into this gamma brainwave state. And later on, I figured out, oh, that's probably what happened to me because I became very concentrated and centered in this message that came through. And so it came through very rapidly. And periodically, I'll get back to that, but mostly it comes through just as that calm that you're talking about.
Now, would you describe that as channeling this spirit guide or this angelic presence, or would you say that it's very much just coming through you as you?
I have never really been able to identify channeling that is what I'm doing. I've asked and asked and asked, especially early on, because I wanted to know where the source was for this information. I kept asking that in meditation, and meditation just kept coming back saying, no, you're just connected with universal mind, which is an omnipresent, past, present, future of all existence.
And I would agree with that from my years of studying it as well, that even the most gifted psychics who literally disassociate from their bodies, they're just tapping in. They're getting themselves out of the way so that they can tap in. Now, then when you mentioned the hypnotherapy, I was intrigued that one of the things that you described in your book was this idea that you could do regression, like go through past lives sort of thing. And I did a lot of past life age regression with people. And one time a woman skipped forward to a future life age progression. And what she described ultimately came true for her, which was quite a remarkable and dramatic shift from the trajectory she had been on. So what intrigued me about your work in the book was this idea of being a spy to the future. Could you talk a little bit more about the real nature of this work to connect past, present, and future as one, and to really be able to manifest from a future perspective?
Well, that's a huge hunk of information, but I'll try to do my best to try to condense that down to something that we can understand. First of all, the book was really a piece of work that came by back engineering my personal life, because I'd seen so many things in the future that had been extremely beneficial to me. And a lot of that was in my real estate investing. It was in my personal life, but it was also just in teaching other people. And I began to see how these things in the future were manifesting very rapidly sometimes. So as I sort of back engineered all of that to see what I was doing, I recognized that as I saw these things, I was actually starting the beginning point of manifesting them. This came about first as a question. I was traveling in the winter, about a 5-hour drive from my house. And I was about an hour into it and it started to rain. It was cold. I understood the potential for icy roads was tremendous. I don't like to drive on icy roads. And when it was a hilly, curvy terrain that we had to go over. And being concerned about this and being relatively intuitive at that time, I just asked the question about the road system and if it was going to get bad and we might have to stop. And I was clearly told, no, you will not have to. You will make it to this certain location 2 hours down the road. And at that location, the road will be completely dry and you will progress on the rest of your journey on dry roads. Sure enough, 2 hours down the road, we reached this location. The roads were dry and it was dry, therefore, all the way to our location. Of course, this just brought up 12 more questions because at that time I ask a lot of questions, so therefore I get a lot of answers. But I asked, okay, did I create that or did I just intuitively know it? Because the classes I was doing at that time were a lot about being, the creatorship of your life. And so I wasn't sure if this intuitive message that I got was just an intuitive message if I was created. And the answer that came back was both. So that set me on a path to try to understand how we create by visualizing or seeing something or intuitively even knowing something. That eventually took me on the journey that brought the book forward on how we actually manifest. And by and large, the SPY technique it's a rapid manifestation, because what I teach people to do is to see opportunities that are already sitting there available for you. Visualization is a good tool. We can visualize things that we want to happen in our life, but unless it's available for us in the near future, it can take a really long time to manifest those in our life at times, because everything has to come into place. So I began to notice that I could scan, and what I call scan, which is spy, into my future, see if something I wanted was present, where it was present, what it was going to take to bring that into my actual reality of life, and begin to own that rather rapidly. It would form as kind of a virtual reality at first, kind of on a holographic sort of basis. And when it came down to this virtual reality, I would notice it would begin to play as various insights or synchronicities even in my life. I know at one point I was really wanting to open this little store where I could practice my intuition. I was going to have books and gifts and other things there. And it was about a 2-hour drive from my home, but I really wanted a little shop there. And it was mostly to change the identity of this business person that I'd held so strongly in the town that I lived, because this little town was a little tourist town. It was a Victorian town, and it was very artsy. And I knew I could just be any person I wanted to be. No one there knew me, personally. So I really wanted to do this. And I was kind of a privileged person in that I could afford to do that. I could afford to go and just play and just become the person I wanted to be. So one day I had a dream. And I knew it was the timing was right to go to this little town and look for this little shop. I had a budget that I was going to work on. And since it was 2 hours away, I wanted it to have the capacity to stay there. So I wanted a little kitchen, a bath, a little place for a day bed or something. But my budget was so low, I thought, there's no way I'm ever going to find this place. But this day, I felt compelled to go look. I drove to the little town. I took one drive around the city commercial location. I saw one sign in the window, went back downtown for lunch, called the woman. She was going to meet me there in an hour, went back to the little shop. And it was a great little Victorian shop. It had hardwood floors and big windows, and it had been an old small grocery store. It had the tall ceilings with tin on the roof, on the ceiling. And it was picturesque. It was just a perfect little spot. I walked around the counter, and there was a stove, a refrigerator, and a sink. Saying, one obstacle is overcome. Walked to the back, and there was a door I assumed was a little closet. I opened it up, and there was a full bath with a bathtub and a sink and a stool, and a nice little nook back there I could put a day bed. So it had everything I needed and wanted. I went back to the woman and asked her how much it was, and it was the exact amount that I'd established I could afford for this little shop. So I walked away that day with a contract for a shop for a year. There is where I developed my intuitive skills, but it was already available. The thing is being aware of it, is spying into the future, and that can come in through meditation. It can come in through a dream impression. It can come in through what I call my immediate downloads, where I'm wide awake. It can come in through so many different things, or even synchronicities that happen in our life that let us know that we're on the right path towards something that we're wanting to manifest. So that's part of it.
Yeah, I really love the way you're describing it. Very often when I have a really strong intuitive hit like that, it's the difference between a dream and a lucid dream. There's a level of clarity, a level of richness to the vision that I'm holding. I can walk around in it. And one of the things that you stated in your book that I really loved is the idea of once we have that download, or once we have that insight, once we've spied into the future, once we realize, this can be mine, one of the things that you do is you surround it in I'll call it a reality bubble, but a bubble of light that preserves it. Could you describe that? Because this is an added piece that I think I can do in my own personal work. Because sometimes I'll get this rich download and I'll say, well, now I'll wait for it to happen and do whatever it takes to get there. But I love this idea that I can actively hold it in consciousness. Could you say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, that came from a physicist friend of mine that had studied charged energy fields. And we together kind of worked on this to understand how something is held in place. Because once it's on that holographic level, if we drop the ball in our energy field on that, it can just dissolve and go away because a hologram is very fragile.
Okay, another way that you describe it is that the future has so much randomness to it, and it's unfolding, and it's this random event generator that's happening all the time. But the moment that we fix our intention on it, in essence, what it does is it creates the path connecting you to it. Did I get that right?
Yeah, we basically become entangled with it, but you can become non-entangled just as easily. So that's why we have to keep our focus on it. But it's not just focus. I mean, you can mentally focus on something and not have a charged energy field. The way that this was explained to me and the way I like to understand it is like a location that has a charged energy field is a lot of concentrated thought has gone into that, and it actually will be measurable at a sacred site, for instance, a healing location where people that residue will remain, and it's a charged energy field. But within our own consciousness, we can create a charged energy field. Now, there's a process in the course that I teach, which is spinning chakras. I mean, it spins chakras and it creates more energy. It creates a heightened state of energy. What they have found that is there's several things that go into this. One is that your DNA, when it becomes excited, when you become motivated about something, it can create biophotons, of course. Biophotons, even though they stay within the body, they're measurable for a short time as they come out of the body with high level equipment. These biophotons create light, of course. We know that when you're in deep concentration or doing very deep psychic work, there are more of these biophotons created. Now, the physicist friend of mine speculates that this creates or works with something called a torsion energy. That was something discovered back in the 50s. And what they found with this torsion energy works between the past, the present, and the future with systems that are breaking down and recreating themselves. That energy basically moves into a future point. When you become in the flow between past, present, and future, and you're creating this intent and concentrated energy around that, what you have is a charged energy field. And once you clasp onto seeing what is out there, you can create this charged energy field, moving it between what has existed in the past to what will exist in the future. But you have to stay entangled with that in order for it to manifest.
I love this. And one of the things that you state in the book is the idea that the future influences the present and the past more so than the past influences the present and the future. And I really love that as a concept. When we get our glimpse of that future state, whether it's what we would wish for or desire or hold in consciousness as an intention, we are connecting through all time and space to that reality that is, in fact, already manifest. As one of my teachers said, once I hold a goal or an intention in consciousness, it's already done. And really, the work is to clear away any of the limitations I have that's preventing me from recognizing that right now. Does that fit with the kind of work that you're teaching?
Absolutely. Yes, 100%. And I think so many times there, and it goes back to the limitations we place on ourselves, that something that is desired in the future can't happen. But those opportunities are everywhere. The future is so random most of the time. If we can just fixate on something that is an opportunity sitting there, I used to call it the silver platter of opportunity. It would just be served up to me. Now, what I did with that was up to me. But you have to take action most of the time with these opportunities, but you also have to mentally hold on to that dream and not let it fall into despair. And even if some glitch comes along, look at that as a blessing, because you can turn lemons into lemonade. I mean, it's I've seen this happen so many times. It's just part of the process. But don't give up. Just keep moving through that, and it will still happen.
Yeah, and I think that if a person imagines, well, this is just, now that I've seen it, it's just going to be a cakewalk to the receiving of it, it may be that we'll encounter a lot of side channels, a lot of additional routes that we're going to have to take, calls, connections, actions, inputs that are going to be required of me. And those are all designed to strengthen my frequency, to that frequency of acceptance, of receiving, of living at that future state. And once we agree to it, we're already up leveling our frequency. And when we're in the position to receive it, we have to, in essence, elevate that energy field to match what it is we're going to be living into. Is that also a way that you would describe it?
Absolutely. I think we grow into those frequencies that we're wanting to become.
Okay,
And
good.
the opportunities will come along that allow us to get there. That's why I said it's quite a journey between those beginning stages of intuition and where I've ended up now, and understanding that.
Yeah. And I guess one of the things that we say is the proof of the pudding is in the tasting. And a lot of times people want to get some kind of proof that they have this superhuman intuition that can work for them to create the success that they desire. And they're waiting for the proof positive. And any disappointment could sway them in the opposite direction, saying, well, this just proves that it isn't real, that it doesn't work. What do you do to help someone stay on the path to the realization of this superhuman intuition that they have available to them?
Well, first of all, I think we have to put it into some practical terms, because, I'm not an overly athletic person, but I do understand that if I played tennis every day and I had a tennis coach every day, I would get much better at playing tennis. It's just the nature of life to be able to build that skill. And I think with intuition, we assume we can take the weekend class and, oh yeah, I should have this down pat. But really it's practicing every day that builds that strength, that builds those neurons with the myelin around them so strong that you own that, like a really, really gifted and practiced musician, or an athlete that goes above and beyond. I think what I did was I practiced so much every day that I just began to understand it was just present. And I didn't have to work at it very hard anymore. It was just going to be present. And I knew the feeling in my body when it was present, when the answers were coming in, and I knew how to get into that state of mind and how to hold that. And I knew how to manifest those things that I wanted or needed. And oftentimes my future knew more about what I was going to need than I did. And I'll give you an example of that. The house I live in right now, I had a dream about it. I could see the floor plan. I understood the pros, the cons, everything about this house. And I had no intentions of buying a house. I had no intentions of moving from the property I lived at. It was a smaller house than the one I live in now, but I didn't know why I needed a larger house, nor how much it was going to be instrumental in a few years for me to have this larger home. So I went to a real estate auction. A woman had gone into a nursing home and they needed to sell this property. And so I looked at it and it needed a little bit of updating, of course, but I didn't intend to buy it. But at the time that it started the bid, it's like, well, I knew the value of the property and it was way below what I felt like the value should be. So I bid. I got the house. I was really intending to just fix it up and probably sell it at some point. But then my nephew moved in with me, and so I needed a little bit more space. And he had a little dog, and we had a nice backyard that was fenced in this new property. So we decided to move. Within a year, my mother had a stroke, and she was in a wheelchair, and she came to live with me. And it was 1 week from the time she was dismissed from the nursing home to come stay with me. It was the only other option we really had besides her staying there permanently. And the house that I bought accommodated her wheelchair on every turn and corner in the bathroom. And it was just perfect. It was an absolutely perfect house for what I was going to need in a couple of years. So I understood at that point why I'd had the dream, why I was compelled to go to the auction, and why I actually bought the house.
Yeah, that's so wonderful that you were able to respond to that nudge.
Yes.
Also. And sometimes we're getting those nudges. We need to not only recognize them, but then act upon them, right? As you were saying earlier, we need to apply it. Now, I get that meditation is an important, we'll say, workout to be able to do any of this. It's a maintenance program. It's also a growth program to be able to enter into, maintain, and develop higher states of consciousness. Meditation is a daily routine for me. Physical exercise, good sleep, nutrition, all of those things. I'm also hearing, Linda, that journaling and this communicative dialogue with the universal source or universal mind is a key part of really being on this path. As we wrap up our time together, could you give a list of what you would consider to be your favorite practices to help someone really develop their superpower intuition?
Yeah, there are several things that I teach people to do, and everyone will have their favorite way of developing this, but one is start a dream journal. You can ask a question before sleep at night, write down your question. In the morning, write down your answer. Eventually, this will begin to make sense to you, and you will begin to see how the subconscious mind and the spiritual realm will begin to communicate with you. Or universal mind is what I refer to that as. The next thing is in meditation, do the same thing. Start a meditation journal, ask a question, record your answer. Not only will you begin to connect more accurately with those answers that come back, but you will begin to train your mind, and it is a training process to go find the answer and bring it back to you. The third thing is just begin to notice those synchronicities in real life form, because oftentimes our intuition is trying to speak to us in these synchronistic ways. So there are so many ways that we can start paying attention to this, but we're just not paying attention to it. I know in my early life, probably my intuition was speaking to me many, many, many times that I just didn't listen. I thought I knew better, or thought I had all the answers. But eventually, I'm glad I started paying attention and listening, because there's such a wealth of information there. Life doesn't have to be as difficult as we try to make it sometimes. And we don't ever have to be the victim with this. We can go find the best possible answer. One of the phrases I like is, show me the way, and those can be on just simple little everyday things to be able to get an answer back on, show me how to do this, because I don't know how to, accomplish this. It may be a task on the computer. It may be a mechanical task. I don't know how to do this. So show me a way, and just be quiet for a minute and see what kind of answer you get. So I've taken this into real practical use, but also into deep, deep understanding of life situations, from extremes from one part to the other. To me, it's just my right-hand advisor.
Absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much. Thanks for the inspiring message and for the powerful book that you recently launched. Best wishes on that. Thanks for being a part of this podcast.
Thank you very much.
I hope you enjoyed our conversation with Linda Eastburn. You can learn more about her work and connect with her at lindaeastburn.com/LINDA-EASTBURN-S-P-I. So it's lindaeastburn.com/LindaEastburn-SPI. Now, in the second part of the podcast, it's just you and me. I'll show you how to use the paraliminal audio sessions in the MINDTRX app to support and deepen what Linda has just taught us. If you're new to the paraliminal approach, these are guided audio sessions that stimulate your whole mind in about 20 minutes, helping you clear resistances and embody insight. Let's dive in. Hello, welcome back. This is the follow-on to my conversation with Linda Eastburn. As we were exploring the power of intuition and how you can make the best use of this natural capability that is within. When I think about the number of paraliminals that would be supportive of this, I came up with 5 different areas in which you might develop your superpowered intuition that is a superhuman capability that is within. So the first area is about connecting to universal mind, or that universal intelligence that Linda referred to. The second is being able to trust intuitive insights when they come. The third is this idea of living into your future life, a fascinating dimension of her work and a real focus at the end of our dialogue together. The next is connecting past, present, and future, that the future may be a more significant indicator of your past and present than your history up until now. And I really love that dimension of her work. And finally, it's being able to raise our frequency, our energetic, our biophoton, gamma wave energy field to support the manifestation of the life that we're choosing to live. There's a lot of jargon and vernacular in there. Some of it we tried to avoid because it got pretty technical, but her book does a nice job of describing quite a lot of what it is that's actually occurring when we manifest from our vision of a future state. So let's start out with this idea of connecting to universal mind. From my years of meditation, I know that we're always connected to it, but that universal mind is also trying to download or connect us to resources that will help us live a fulfilled life. So a couple of paraliminals that can really assist with that is, the first is dream play, so that you learn not only to recognize your dreams when you have them, but then also to be able to be lucid in your dream state and interact with that universal intelligence. Now, the first and most important step in remembering your dreams is being able to tell yourself that you're going to dream. And the first thing upon awakening is remembering what you dreamed and write it down. The more important it is to you, the more likely it is that you're going to start developing this great rapport with your subconscious and the universal mind as a means of communicating to you through your non-conscious awareness. Dream play, paraliminal, very powerful. The second paraliminal in this idea of connecting is finding treasure. What we know is that all around us are resources that are here to support us in getting us where we want to go. The idea is once we set our intention, then our mind can start to sort for and locate those resources so that we can have them, connect with them, make good use of them. So finding treasure is a great way to connect with that universal mind and its ability to bring to you what it is you need to be paying attention to. The second area is about trusting your intuitive insights. And really the number one paraliminal for this is intuition amplifier. So not only are you going to be increasing your access to your intuitive powers, but in addition to that, learning to recognize and trust and validate that connection that you have. So that's the paraliminal, it's intuition amplifier. The third major area is the idea of living into your future life. I really enjoyed this aspect of Linda's description because while I have had visions of future situations, and I've also established goals and envisioned a future situation, what she was saying is that there is much more of a natural flow in the direction of that future state once we wrap it with the intention of our light energy, our imaginal field, our open heart, grasping and enveloping that future state. And in order to really understand this idea of a future life, there are two paraliminals that really help to develop these connections. The first is called finding yourself, where we're starting at our present and we're going into our past to our pre-birth experience. And that past life or that regression into stages of our life help us to connect our present with everything that's happened up until now. Then the new history generator paraliminal is about going from the past into the future, coming back forward from past in several different ways, seeing the randomness, seeing our connection to opportunity and possibility, and then taking that future life age progression and seeing possibility for ourselves of what it is we would like to manifest. So the new history generator has a couple of advantages. Not only does it untangle the unnecessary or negative things that keep us tethered to the past, but it also helps us establish and lasso or tether to those future possibilities that we would like to create for ourselves. So the combination of finding yourself a new history generator has this beautiful way of training your mind to be fluid through all space and time. It's really powerful when you get to the depth of these. And I should remind you that every paraliminal has a little manual that comes along with it. And if you read that, not only will you get information about what best ways to use each paraliminal, but also what are the possibilities for going beyond. And that's my invitation to you here, is recognize you can go beyond and get more of what life is here ready to offer you. The fourth area we want to look at is connecting past, present, and future. And there's one paraliminal that does it quite graphically. It's called self-love, where we take our past self and we take our future self and we connect to the present self. And that harmony between past, present, and future means that we have a seamless flow of the good, the strength, the power, and the capability that is within us, ready to be focused on that which we choose to manifest. The fifth and final area of paraliminals that I've considered around Linda's work is the idea of raising your frequency for receiving. I talked a bit about this with her toward the end. This idea that here is a future state I choose to live in. If I haven't manifested it yet, it's probably because I wasn't ready, capable of living at that level. How do I raise myself up to be in a place to truly receive it? To know that once I'm living at it, it's the ideal thing for me. And so there's two paraliminals that I feel get at this concept quite nicely. The first is prosperity. Prosperity says that the universe is abundant, and it's your prosperity consciousness that gives you access to that abundance. So if you're imagining a future state, but you're putting yourself down, oh, I could never do that, oh, that's beyond me, oh, I'd never be able to, then that's got to shift. And prosperity says, I'm going to develop a prosperity consciousness so that becomes a reality that I can live into. It's quite powerful. It's not just limited to financial abundance. Prosperity could be an abundance of relationships that are supportive, resources that are supportive, certainly money, time, energy. There are a lot of resources that we can make ourselves available to and express through us as us when we recognize it's natural. The universe is abundant. I have access to that abundance. The final paraliminal in this area is living the law of attraction, which I did with Jack Canfield. And living the law of attraction is all about raising your vibrational level to be able to accept and receive. So it's ask, believe, receive. That's the concept behind the law of attraction. So once you've asked for it and you believe that you can have it, now you need to be in this vibratory rate, this high level of vibration to receive it. And you can. That's the great promise of how the universe works. You have access to all that you need to live the full expression of the life you're here to express. Thanks very much for being a part of this. I look forward to being with you again in a future session. Peace and blessings. Thanks for joining me today. I applaud your willingness to maximize your potential. You can easily use the paraliminal audio sessions in the MINDTRX app to stimulate your non-conscious mind, that is your inner mind, to reduce any resistance in your life and propel you toward the success you want. Go to www.mindtrx.com/go. These amazing audio tools have helped millions, and I encourage you to bring them into your life today. Be sure to be back for more episodes of the MINDTRX Podcast. You'll find insightful conversations with authors, experts, and thought leaders, all devoted to improving your life's experience. And if you found value in this episode, be sure to subscribe, share, and leave us a review. Your support helps us keep the momentum of transformation going. Thank you again for being here on our MINDTRX Podcast.